Hello and welcome to MySecurityTV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name's Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor with MySecurity Media, and this is a special Tuesday evening session here in Sydney for our normal episode, and we're going to be crossing over to Sweden and the UK for my afternoon and for their morning. We're going to be having Leo Levit, who is the Chairman with ONVIF, first up, and we're going to be looking at the new ONVIF profiles M and D. These are dealing with dynamic video analytics and also access control peripherals. Without further ado, I'll bring on the chairman of ONVIF, Leo Levit, there in Sweden. Leo, thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Good on you, and thank you very much. Well done, and good morning to you.
Good morning.
Leo, we had a very good sort of pre-interview discussion, and it's really a hard one where we're going to start with, but ONVIF have just released Profile M and Profile D. Maybe we'll start with introduce ONVIF and sort of what they're up to, and then we'll move into profiles, and then we'll kind of move into more broader industry discussion. So a little bit more about ONVIF and what your key sort of role is as a global organisation.
So, as you might know, the mission of ONVIF is to provide and promote open interfaces for the security industry to enable effective interoperability. So, ONVIF is a global organization, and it's really a member-driven organization. We're counting 500 plus members across the globe at the moment, and those are device manufacturer, system integrator, and so on and so on. We also have a number of companies that are working with the clients that receiving information from the security devices, such as VMS manufacturers. So our role is very simple, basically. It's to define the network interfaces connecting security devices, standardize them, provide profiles that really can make it easier for the users to identify products that are conformant with the profiles that include specifications.
Well, you've got about 8 key profiles. You've been around since 2008. It's amazing how fast time flies. And again, I can't remember how many members you would have had, but it's great to see about 500 sort of a member base there as well. And you're with Access, so that's a member base. Maybe how does the committee get structured and the member base? How does that happen?
So ONVIF have a number of committees, and committees are built up by the members. The committee members are elected by the voting of the of the members of ONVIF.
So you nominate, members nominate them. Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, members can be nominated to the committee, and then there is a voting process to fill that.
Now, you've been in the role as the chair, so you're sort of almost like the CEO role. Is that how I said it? You've been in the role since early this year.
It's not a commercial enterprise, really.
No, but just to get a sense.
So my role is to lead a steering committee, which is a committee responsible for the organization as a whole. So we're not setting the technical specification. We have a technical committee who really work with the specifications. We have technical services committee that works with test tool and profiles and process for the conformance. For the conformance products. And we also have a communication committee, which is very important for us because we're also communicating and marketing what we do. So communication committees have a very important role to play in order to really communicate and promote ONVIF.
Well, look, it's one of those things. It's it's not a small task to bring out a new profile. It's a major influence in the industry on how the industry gets to function, particularly around video surveillance and IoT devices. Let's start with sort of Profile M. It came out first, which instigated this interview. And then while we're in that process, Profile D popped out as well. So maybe talk us, and there's about 8 profiles all up. I've definitely been applying Profile S and T, but we won't go through them all. That's a whole series there. But maybe introduce us to Profile M, and then we'll have a chat about Profile D.
Absolutely. So before we jump into that, so I think it's very, I think at least I'm very proud of this milestone that we just passed some months ago, that we have now over 20,000 conformant products on the market.
Nice.
So ONVIF holds the database of all the products that are conformant to one or several profiles, and we're counting over 20,000 of those, which is a massive achievement, really.
And just to clarify, Leo, they're products, or they're the end products, right? Are they the cameras and the devices and the switches through that, or is it also the VMS profiles as well that they have to integrate?
So let's say it like that. In order to pass the information from one node to another, both of them need to understand this language, right? So, of course, when the camera sends something to VMS need to understand what it is. So profiles are implemented on both sides.
Got it. And so that's 2 products out of that 20,000?
So it's 20,000 of individual products, both VMSs and or clients and devices, as we call them, that are conformant to one or several profiles.
Nice. Well, look, just a bit of feedback from you. I'm sure you do get it from your Australian partners anyway, but the ONVIF profiles are within our own specifications here for most projects, regardless, and obviously within the Australian standards. I think there's a slight variation between the Australian standards, ISO standards, and ONVIF. You can go either way, I think. Might be something we might need to check. If anyone's listening, let us know. But I'm pretty sure if you're not compliant with a certain standard, you can go to the ONVIF profiles, and you can still kind of meet those specs. So, yeah, no, keep up the good work. We cover it on our CCTV buyer's guide. So we cover anything with ONVIF gets put onto that particular channel. But yeah, maybe we were moving into sort of machine learning and AI, and maybe even touching on things like facial recognition and biometrics. And this is where Profile M sort of comes into play, right?
Yes, absolutely. So we talked about that just before before we went live, right? And we see certain trends on the market, and AI and machine learning, deep learning as a subset of those is really a trend that's emerging, and it's triggered by several things that are going on. So first of all, there is a technology as such that becoming mature. There is capabilities in the devices that are now able to really accelerate artificial intelligence on the edge. So it doesn't need to be a massive service. The device is becoming more and more capable, but also the use case is becoming more and more mature. So it's kind of maturity with an AI that goes all the way from the physical capabilities of the devices to the capabilities of the people who are working with those solutions. And those applications generate a massive amount of data. And data as such is, of course, of a value, but it's much more important to understand what's in this data and how it can be used. So there is a great demand on standardizing the way the data from the analytics application in the devices transferred to other devices to build a complete analytics system. So different type of metadata can be transferred and used by the clients from the devices. And Profile M is a profile that standardized how the metadata is transferred and some events.
So in other words, how it's structured, the sort of the data set that it creates, right? And then how you can then read that. Yeah, so the metadata could be, well, within ONVIF, within Profile M, we have specified a number of specific classes like geolocation, vehicle, license plate, human face, human body,
and there is also a generic object class that can be used for the broader use. And those classes could be used for several purposes. For instance, you could identify a number plate and transfer the data of this number plate to open a gate when the vehicle approaching a gate, and it's utilized as a credential for and to enter the premises. So I think it's very important profile for us on the way to enable utilization of AI as a technology that generates a massive amount of data and could be used by receiving systems to build a sustainable and working system that really helps communities.
Where does the drive come from for, say, a profile like this? Because most of the devices now are creating that metadata, and is it the member base of ONVIF goes, hey, we're all doing this, and we're finding that some systems aren't integrating right, and you know we're all sort of collecting the same data, but now we need to standardize it because you know it's not obviously not a new thing. Does it get to a point where, okay, everyone's doing it, now we're getting some integration issues and we need to have a new profile so everyone's doing it in the same way, and it sort of takes the competition out of the market, does it not?
Actually, it's not. It's triggered the usability of those devices, because I think we need to get back to the whole topic of interoperability, why it's good.
Yeah.
There are very few companies, if any, that are totally end-to-end, that is not dependent on any other components to build up an entire system. So for a lot of device manufacturers, for instance, it's extremely important to reach other systems as well, so system integrators can easily and safely take the components from device manufacturers and know that other system will receive the data in the correct way. So actually, interoperability does not remove the competitiveness, but it's really trigger the possibilities and evolves the market. It's really stimulates the market to utilize the technology in a better way.
And where this is all for new products coming through, do you think it's more of is this potentially a firmware upgrade, or is it for new products coming out that they would want to conform with Profile M?
It's a very good question. It's actually both. So when you test your products for conformance, conformance is valid for a specific firmware version. So if your product have received a new firmware upgrade that enables Profile M, that product becomes conformant. So we will see both new products that implements Profile M, but we also will see products that already have the capabilities for metadata, but they will probably
it's all good.
probably get new functionalities by implementing firmware upgrades.
Yeah, and maybe we were touching on sort of facial recognition just briefly. There's been a bit of pushback on facial recognition in some parts, even in the US, potentially here discussions in Australia about moratoriums on use of facial recognition. A profile like this, would that potentially provide some level of comfort to know that there's a bit of insight and measurement there and recognition that facial recognition is a part of the metadata and it is standardized? Do you think that will help these kind of discussions?
I think it's important to see the different roles of different players in the industry. So ONVIF's role is to create interfaces and specify interfaces and profiles that makes interoperability easier and create possibilities for the systems to be built up and fulfill use cases. But at the same time, there is a great need to operate and build those systems in accordance to to ethical norms and legal requirements. So facial recognition is a great technology, and as any technology, it can be used for the greater good, but it can also be used to harm. And I think it's a great discussion to have whether facial recognition is technology of the future or it should be just killed. But I think from ONVIF side, we want to create an interface that can be used, and we will want to work with those who develop the systems and see how the system should work in accordance to the ethical norms. So the great technology as facial recognition can be used for the greater good and not the other way around.
Well, everyone's using facial recognition anyway. Every time they pick up the device, it's using their face. So it's just a matter of the application. One thing that just came to me then is people's gait, the way they walk, included in this?
How could you explain?
So everyone, their walking signature, their gait, the way that they walk is also an individual signature for people. Is that something under sort of, you mentioned object counting, license plate recognition, facial recognition. Is there other biometrics that we might not be fully utilizing covered in this potentially, or is it quite not specific?
Not as a part of Profile M, but of course it can be. If you can obviously define a human body and track it with the help of this profile, and body will move in a certain way, and you can see the path of moving, right? So, but it's up to receiving system to really analyze this path and see how it can be triggered certain actions.
Very good. Okay, and then this also covers, I mean, this is all ONVIF it's covering now. I noticed this is also including sort of drones. So whether it's an IP camera or a video-based drone, this ONVIF applies to that. Do you find ONVIF being more and more applied to drones? Basically, it's any camera and video surveillance. Is that where ONVIF has moved to? Are your members growing in that area?
I don't have the data about a particular industry where ONVIF is growing at the moment, but obviously as we develop those specifications to cover all security devices, so I don't see why drones or any other device cannot be used that if they want to build or be a part of the system that integrates easily.
Great. Well, maybe let's touch on Profile D as well. And we do have Paul Williams in the background. So we'll be moving on to Paul very shortly. But we'll just finish off with Profile D, Leo. And this is for access control peripherals. So obviously the integration with access control systems and security management platforms.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important because over time, at least during my work within Access Communications, we've seen ONVIF as something that really specifies communication between camera and VMS. But actually, if you see that the market access control and devices connected to access control system are very important, and that's very much reflected in the ONVIF portfolio of profiles. So Profile D is not the first profile in access control domain for ONVIF, but it adds some new use cases. So the initial or the most important parts there is that Profile D transferred the input credentials, identifiers, and request for access from, for instance, card reader, pads, any other type of devices that sits at the gate or at the door and want to transfer the credential to the system, who will decide whether to open the door or gate or not. And also, what's included in this profile now is the actions such as locking or unlocking.
Right.
So
and
that's
it aligns to that profile A and profile C, because it has been some standard comms around electronic access control systems previously.
Right.
Yeah, and as you just mentioned, this comes into the biometric readers, the cameras for iris, facial, and license plate recognition again. So it's kind of going down to that maybe next level of the way that the access control is moving. Door status is there, temperature, motion, and some output devices. So these are quite good. Any others in the pipeline? These two came out kind of back to back. What's obviously everyone locking lockdown, they've had more time to do work on these maybe, but yeah, what's in the pipeline with these?
So I mean, the process of getting profiles out is pretty long, because it's an industry standard. It needs to be verified. It needs to be agreed between members. So it's really, it takes time, and profiles are built on the interface specifications. Which is a result of the work from technical committee that I mentioned before as a part of ONVIF. So there is a constant discussions and work within those committees on different specifications, and specifications are being updated regularly. So, but it not necessarily mean that all of them will end up in the profile. There is a huge amount of work done on the specifications as such, and sometimes we group them together when we see that they fulfill a very specific use case, like in case of profile D for the access control peripherals, and then we release it as a profile. So one important thing that you all can follow now is that actually the specification work is within ONVIF is done as open source, so it's on GitHub. And people can see the specifications and participate and kind of give the comments to the development. And that also triggers a massive possibility for companies who are not members to give input. So because from time to time we get the question, yeah, but 500 members, that's great. How you get input from the market? And I think GitHub, it's a fantastic platform, but it's also a way for us to get the input from people outside ONVIF.
I think the work is continuous. Yeah, absolutely. I do have a question. Are there devices in the process of qualification for these profiles already? Yeah, how long does it take, I suppose, before devices start to take on these profiles? What's the sort of the life cycle?
So first of all, in order for profile to be released, there are a number of criteria that need to be fulfilled. So that have to be devices and clients who verify that the profile works. So even before it's released, there are devices from the members who work with these profiles that hold the conformant. Now, if we see at profile M, at least, I haven't checked profile D, but for profile M, I'm pretty sure there are quite a number of devices that are already state conformants in the database. And you can always see the conformance devices or conformance product database on onvif.org. So it's open information, and that's probably the only valid source to see whether product is really conformant product or not.
Actually, that's onviv.org, and it's quite a resource-rich website as well. There's a lot of content in here as well, so it's worth having a look. And I'm just cognizant of time here, Leo, but one area that did spark my interest in being here in the Asia Pacific, it certainly has our interest, is the tech divide that we're seeing in the world. Do you think ONVIF has growing importance when we have sort of trade conflict emerging and in technology? How do you read this in terms of ONVIF's role between the differentiation? We're obviously talking about sort of US-China technology, but there's always that divide, and how ONVIF plays an important role there.
Yeah. So again, the mission of ONVIF is to act as a global standardization organization for the network interfaces for the security devices, and we have a number of members from China, and those companies been really important for us and had a lot of participation in different committees and help us to develop. Unfortunately, some of those companies ended up in variety of lists from US Chamber of Commerce, for instance, that limits their possibility to access a certain information from ONVIF. We as an organization are always following the laws and regulations applicable. So we follow these restrictions that US put on those companies. But the dream scenario is that we can act for one global standard that could unite technologies rather than splitting them.
Yeah, as you say, I think that's it's a dream. It's a dream. I don't know whether it's going to happen or not, but I think, again, we need the likes of ONVIF there, I believe. I know it's definitely helped me a couple of times when we're trying to spec cameras and the like. You just go to those ONVIF profiles and you kind of that's your base, and you go from there. So it's always good to see. And as Hannah pointed out, it's a bit of a game changer. D's a good one, but obviously M is also another one, and flows on from what we talked about last week with our data scientist as well. Now, we haven't covered off on COVID and the situation with that, but maybe some closing comments on COVID, Leo, in terms of the market, the video surveillance market. CCTV has been quite prominent. It's had to adapt for people counting. You know, that video analytics has played a more important and sort of more high-profile role. Is this something you've observed globally, or all of your members have been observing as well? And yeah, just any particular comments or observations you've had in that domain?
First of all, the pandemic is a tragic event in human history, no doubt there. But I think it had its positive effects on the technological development, and we have seen a number of use cases being on the market for a very long time, like crowd management, people counting, different types of detections from analytics. But now there is a real demand and real willingness on the market to implement those, like mask detection and crowd management. So the industry adapt very quickly, and it's a big number of players on the market now that really implement analytical capabilities in the devices that can provide this information to other systems for secure health and safety of the people. So I think it's very prominent that we see development of analytical capabilities triggered by COVID situation. As an industry, we also adapted very quickly to online events. Instead of trade shows, we have multiple events going on online. Education been very important for us, because majority of our members work with channel, with distribution, with resellers, and education towards those guys been extremely important all the time. So now it's more online, in opposite to physical face-to-face meeting. Even with an ONVIF, we used to meet on regular basis. Now it's haven't been possible, but I think we're all human beings and we're very dependent on face-to-face human interaction. So I think I really look forward to the next events where we can meet again and start discussing, because as people, we really need this personal interaction to trigger discussions, to trigger innovation. And I think industry in the whole will benefit from that in the future.
Very good. And it's very consistent. I did a webinar last night with members across the world, very similar views in terms of the importance of human interaction. But it's definitely been something we've monitored with the role of video analytics, as you say, and you pointed out. So it has been quite an interesting ride from the technology side. But Leo Levit, the ONVIF Steering Committee Chair there in Sweden, thank you so much for your time. And sorry we didn't have more. We'll have to have you on again as these profiles roll out and you settle into your chair there. This is your first year as the ONVIF Chair, so enjoy the role.
Thank you.